Okay, now we're on the next one, which is multiplying integers. We did subtracting before. Now we're doing multiplying. And the good news about multiplying is that it's easier, in my opinion, than doing the addition and subtraction. It requires just a step less with regard to the thinking process. But the good news also for you is that the same rules that apply to multiplying positive and negative integers also apply to multiplying and dividing. Multiplying and dividing have the exact same rules when it comes to positive and negative numbers. And here's what I mean. There's only one difference that you should see here between the subtraction rules of adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers and the multiplying and dividing rules, and that comes in this step. These first two steps are the same. If you multiply a positive number by another positive number, you're going to get a positive answer. If you multiply a negative number by a negative number, you're going to get a positive answer. Same thing goes for dividing. Divide a positive by a positive, you're going to get a positive answer. Divide a negative by a negative, you're going to get a positive answer. So it all depends on what symbol is in front of the numbers will determine what the answer is, positive or negative. When it comes to multiplying and dividing though, anytime you have differing symbols, you're always going to have a negative. Multiplying and dividing. So if the symbols are different, you're multiplying and dividing, you're always going to have a negative answer. Whereas before, it would take the symbol of the larger number when you were subtracting and adding. With multiplying and dividing, as long as one is positive and one is negative, your answer is always going to be negative. So let's take a look and see what I mean by that. I'm only going to run through a few because I think you'll see this pretty quickly. Let's look at multiplying integers. Our quiz. Here we go. Here I have a positive number multiplied by a negative number. So I know right off the bat, since the symbols are different, I'm going to have a negative answer. And then I just multiply the numbers like normal. 17 times 7 is 119. I just needed to know if it was positive or negative. Because the symbols are different, it's going to be negative. The multiplication takes place exactly like you would multiply two numbers together. Same thing here, I have a positive 20. Because it doesn't specify, you can assume it's positive. If it was negative, it would have a negative right there. But when it doesn't have anything, it's always going to be positive. So I have a positive times a negative number. That's going to always give me a negative answer. In this case, 15 times 20 is 300. Here I have another negative times, and this doesn't have a symbol, so I'm going to assume it's positive. Negative and a positive, differing symbols, always going to be negative. Do a few more. 2 times 5 is 10, but I have a positive 2 and a negative 5. So in this case, it's going to be negative 10. Same thing there. 5 times 4 is 20. Is it positive or negative? Well, they have a positive 4 and a negative 5, so the answer is negative 20. Let me show you how this works in dividing, because it is no different. Dividing, same thing. I take my numbers and I divide them out like normal. 28 divided by 4. That's going to give me 7. But is it positive or negative? I have a negative and a negative. I have two things that are negative being divided. Anytime the symbols are the same in multiplication and division, my answer is going to be positive. So in this case, it will be a positive 7. Here I have another two negatives. What's 24 divided by 8? 3. But because the symbols are the same, they're both negative, I'm going to do it's a positive 3. Because two negatives equals a positive when you're talking about multiplication and division. Not necessarily the case all the other times, but with multiplication and division it is. So now I have a positive 63 divided by a negative 7. So I know my answer is going to be negative because the symbols are different. So what is 63 divided by 7? 9. Negative. Another positive 14 divided by negative 2. So symbols are different. So I know it can be negative. 14 divided by 2 is 7. Do one more. Negative 15 divided by a positive 3. It's a positive and it's a negative and a positive. So my answer is going to be negative. 15 divided by 3 is 5. So as you can see, it's not hardly any different than what you did with subtraction and addition of positive and negative numbers. In fact, it's kind of easier because you do the math just like normal. The numbers are divided and multiplied just like a normal division or multiplication problem. The only extra step you have to take is to determine, is it a positive answer or a negative answer? And if they're both positive numbers that you're multiplying and dividing, the answer is going to be a positive answer. If they're both negative numbers that you're multiplying or dividing, the answer is going to also be a positive. The only time the answer is going to be negative is when one of the numbers is positive and one of the numbers is negative. It's really that simple. I hope that helps you out. That should get you through the end of Unit 1, and you should be able to move on to Unit 2 with that information.